Good evening. How are you? Are you guys excited for VBS? We're going to have so much fun this evening. I am looking forward to a great night. We got all kinds of fun activities planned for you. So as we get started, there are a couple of things we need to talk about, right? We need to talk about some rules. First, rule number 1. Tonight we need to be safe. Say that again. Be safe. Proverbs 1:33 says, "Whoever listens to me will live in safety and be at ease without fear of harm." So when we listen, that means things are going to go well for us. And so when we listen to our teachers, that helps us be safe. Rule number 2, be respectful. Repeat after me. Be respectful. Matthew 7:12 says, "Do to others as whatever you would like them to do to you." Treat people the way you want to be treated. Rule number 3, be responsible. Repeat that. Be responsible. Need to work willingly at whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. You want to be on your best behavior and have the best actions that you can and take responsibility for those actions. Okay. Does everybody have their name tag on? Raise your hand if you got your name tag. Awesome. We need our name tags. Keep those name tags on so that we know who you are. We know you are where you're supposed to be. And so that we can help keep you safe. Also, once again tonight, if you got your name written down for an award yesterday, it's still in the drawing. But you have a chance to get more entries for our awards, for our Sunshine Awards. So people who are listening really well, people who are answering questions, people who are being a great example of who Jesus wants us to be. You'll be getting awards, and then we'll have a drawing for some prizes.
Hey, Patrick, Goliath has no name tag.
Oh, hi, Goliath. Speaking of Goliath, tonight we're talking about David and Goliath. That is probably the most famous story about David. And so before we go ahead and get started and watch our video, let's sing a couple of songs. Let's stand up. Stand up, stand up, stand up. Stand up and shout it if you love my Jesus. Stand up and shout it if you love my Lord. I want to know, do you love my Lord? Sit down and whisper if you love my Jesus. Sit down and whisper if you love my Lord. I wanna know, do you love my Lord? Stand up and shout it if you love my Jesus. Stand up and shout it if you love my Lord. I wanna know, do you love my Lord? Okay, this one's got some hand motions. So I'm all wrapped up, I'm all tied up, I'm all tangled up in Jesus. I'm all wrapped up, I'm all tied up, I'm all tangled up in Jesus. I'm all wrapped up, I'm all tied up, I'm all tangled up in God. I'm all wrapped up, I'm all tied up, I'm all tangled up in Jesus. I'm all wrapped up, tied up, tangled up in God. Oh yeah. Want to go faster? Here we go. I'm all wrapped up, I'm all tied up, I'm all tangled up in Jesus. I'm all wrapped up, I'm all tied up, I'm all tangled up in God. I'm all wrapped up, I'm all tied up, I'm all tangled up in Jesus. I'm all wrapped up, tied up, tangled up in God. Oh yeah. I'm all wrapped up, I'm all tied up, I'm all tangled up in Jesus. I'm all wrapped up and all tied up, I'm all tangled up in God. I'm all wrapped up, I'm all tied up, I'm all tangled up in Jesus. I'm all wrapped up, tied up, tangled up in God. Oh yeah. I forget those movements. What do you want? Let's see. Ooh. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. I've got the joy, 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 joy. Down in my heart. Where? To stay, and I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart, and I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I've got the love of Jesus down in my heart. Where? Where? I've got the love of Jesus down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. To stay, and I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. Okay, this, you can go ahead and sit down. This is one of my favorite songs when I was growing up and I was learning kids' songs. It's Deep Down in My Heart. Let's see how well we know this one. I love the Lord Messiah deep down in my heart. I love the Lord Messiah deep down in my heart. I say deep, deep, I say down, down, I say deep down in my heart. Yeah, deep, deep, I say down, down, I say deep down in my heart. So boys and girls too, if you want to, when we get to deep, deep, you get down, deep down in my heart, and then you say, yeah. Yeah, Goliath, there we go. I'm going to try to pitch that a little bit higher. Here we go. That's the wrong button. There we go. I love the Lord Messiah deep down in my heart. I love the Lord Messiah deep down in my heart. I say deep, deep, I say down, down, I say deep down in my heart. Yeah, deep, deep, I say down, down, I say deep down in my heart. I love to sing his praises deep down in my heart. I love to sing his praises deep down in my heart. I say deep, deep, I say down, down, I say deep down in my heart. Yeah. Deep, deep, say down, down, say deep down in my heart. I love my Christian family deep down in my heart. I love my Christian family deep down in my heart. Say deep, deep, say down, down, say deep down in my heart. Deep, deep, say down, down, say deep down in my heart. Awesome. I would like to introduce to you tonight David. Woo! And Goliath. Woo! David is God's chosen future king. Woo! Goliath is an enemy of God. Boo! Tonight we're going to be learning about David and Goliath. And so, we're going to watch a video telling about David's story with Goliath. We'll talk about our big idea, our memory verse, and then we're going to head to our classes. Y'all ready? Here we go.
The Philistines, an enemy of the people of Israel, drew up their troops for battle and set up camp on a hill. King Saul and the Israelites came together and camped on a hill on the other side of a valley from the Philistines to prepare to fight the enemy forces. Goliath, one of the Philistine soldiers who was a giant at nearly 10 feet tall, stepped out into the open. Covered in hundreds of pounds of bronze armor and carrying a spear the size of a fence rail, he called out to the Israelite troops, "Why bother using your whole army? Pick your best fighter to battle me. If he kills me, the Philistines will all become your slaves. But if I kill him, you'll all be our slaves and serve us." When Saul and his troops heard the Goliath's challenge, they became terrified and lost all hope. Away from the battlefield, Jesse and his youngest son David were home in Bethlehem. Jesse was too old and David was too young to join Saul's army, but Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed the king to war. One day, Jesse told David to take food to his brothers in the camp. Jesse said, "Check in on your brothers to see whether they are getting along all right, and let me know how they're doing." David got up early the next morning and started off toward the battlefield to bring his brothers the food. He arrived at the camp just as the army was moving into battle formation, shouting their war cry. David ran to find his brothers within the army's ranks. While they were talking together, Goliath stepped out and gave the same challenge he had issued before. As the Israelite soldiers fled in fear, David asked what the man who killed Goliath would receive. They said, "The king will give the man who kills the giant riches, his daughter as a bride, and freedom for his whole family." Eliab, his oldest brother, heard David speaking with the men and got mad. "What are you doing here? Why aren't you minding your sheep?" David replied, "What's wrong? All I did was ask a question." King Saul called for David. "Master," said David, "don't give up hope. I'm ready to go and fight this Philistine." Saul answered David, "You can't fight Goliath. You're too young and inexperienced, and he's been fighting since before you were born." David replied, "I've been a shepherd, tending sheep for my father. Whenever a lion or bear came and took a lamb from the flock, I'd go after it, knock it down, and rescue the lamb. If it turned on me, I'd grab it by the throat, wring its neck, and kill it. Lion or bear, it made no difference. I killed it. And I'll do the same to this Philistine pig who is taunting the troops of God. God, who delivered me from the teeth of the lion and the claws of the bear, will deliver me from this Philistine." Saul said, "Go, and God help you." Then Saul outfitted David in his own battle armor. Saul put his bronze helmet on David's head and belted his sword on him over the armor. David tried to walk, but he could hardly take a single step. David told Saul, "I can't even move with all this stuff on me. I'm not used to this." And he took it all off. Then David took his shepherd's staff, selected 5 smooth stones from the brook, and put them in the pocket of his shepherd's pack. He grabbed his sling and headed out to face Goliath. Goliath looked down at David and laughed as he said, "Am I a dog that you come after me with a stick?" David answered, "You come at me with sword, spear, and battle axe. I come at you in the name of God, the God of Israel's troops, whom you curse and mock. This very day, God is handing you over to me. Everyone gathered here will learn that God doesn't save by means of sword or spear. The battle belongs to God, and He's handing you to us on a platter."
So our big idea tonight is God helps us to be brave and fights our battles. Our memory verse is, "You come to me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies." 1 Samuel 17:45. It's time for us to go to our classes. We're so excited. Looking forward to that. We're going to go ahead and send who's our first group that goes to games? Pre-K. I'm going to go ahead and let y'all go out that direction. Got some exciting games today. You're going to get to battle Goliath. And which group starts by going to crafts? Okay, 1st and 2nd grade. I don't remember off the top of my head what you all are doing today, but I know it's exciting. 3rd through 5th grade, I'll let you all go on down to your class. If you'll go down these stairs here, and then toddler, if you'll go out that way down to your class. Then Bob, if you'll stand up. And lead these fine young people to their class in the annex. I've got this for you. If you all will get out your songbooks and turn to number 749. 749 will be our song before our lesson. The battle belongs to the Lord. And I think I need to turn this mic down just a little bit. It's got a little echo. 749. In heavenly armor we'll enter the land. The battle belongs to the Lord. No weapon that's fashioned against us will stand. The battle belongs to the Lord. And we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. We sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. When your enemy presses in hard, do not fear. The battle belongs to the Lord. Take courage, my friend, your redemption is near. The battle belongs to the Lord. And we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. We sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. Let's go ahead and just have everybody move right here. That way we're kind of talking one section. If we can do that, I think we'll be set.
Rock. All right. Yeah, they are. Thank you. I wonder if I can do that. It's a little funky. I'll just bring this out here. I noticed Trish and Pam decided to sit back a little further tonight. Last night I was a little using my P's like puh, puh, puh. They were afraid to get hit. They were very close to getting hit last night. I'm just kidding. It wasn't that bad. Just funning. All right, everybody. How are we tonight? Everybody good? Everybody happy? Brother Tommy, how did our brother from Cumberland Heights do with the knee surgery? Good. Okay, yeah. All right, very good. The group that came from Cumberland Heights last night plan to be back tomorrow night. Didn't get to come tonight because of work schedules, but they do plan to be here again. So when you see them, be sure to give them a nice, warm welcome. All right. Okay. When I don't see, never mind, I'll be quiet. All right. If you have your Bibles, let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 17. We do not have time to go through every verse the way we did last night. So I think we'll probably wind up just sort of giving a synopsis. But I also don't think that we in here are ignorant as to the story of David and Goliath. But I do think there are some things that we need to pick out and remind ourselves about. So 1 Samuel chapter 17 is where we are. It's a fairly sizable chapter. 57, 58 verses. Yeah, 58 verses. So, all righty, let me get this ready to go. Hello, Aaron. Hello, Summer. Good to see y'all. All right, so we have about 35 minutes, give or take. and we'll go ahead and get started. So I read through this several times, as I generally do if I'm going to talk about a particular text. And the one thing I'm going to trail off on today, and it's a little bit different, even though our title is going to be the same. We're calling this tonight, God Gives Us the Victory. God gives us the victory. Now let me ask you this before we ever get started. Who is the biggest character in 1 Samuel 17? Boom. Les, thank you for correctly responding. It's God, isn't he? God's the biggest. But what do people have a tendency to do, just like Israel's army? Focus on what looks biggest to us in the physical sense. And what that does is it makes us afraid because we're smaller than that. That's what gives them the validity. It's what gives them the status that we don't have. And if something's bigger than we are, I wouldn't want to fight it, would you? I mean, if I'm going to get in a fight on the playground, it's not going to be because I'm going to go pick on the biggest guy on the playground. It's going to be because maybe I have to stand up for myself or I'm standing up for somebody else. But I'm not going to just say, I think I'll pick a fight with that 7'2" giant over there. That's crazy. Nor would I, unless I thought I could win, tell the fastest guy on the playground, I want to race. I already know I'm going to lose. So see, when we start looking at things like that and we forget God is bigger, one of the biggest things about this chapter is I think God is trying to say, hey, by the way, don't forget I'm here. And I'm going to show you that I'm here by getting the smallest guy on the field the victory so that he can be elevated to the position that I've planned for him, but he will be the one that points you to me. So that's a beautiful idea. We don't have to be the biggest, the strongest, and as we said yesterday, the best looking, most athletic, to lead someone to God. Nor do we need to fear those who look bigger than we when we're on the field of spiritual, particularly, battle. All right? So I guess that's kind of the setup for what we're going to be looking at tonight. God is the one who gives us the victory. And I got this really cool looking picture out. I went through this afternoon and just found pictures of David and Goliath, and they're all essentially the same, you know. But that's pretty good if you can make out the detail. One of my sons, who is, well, Timothy, you've seen Timothy around. Back in his day of, young and tough and all that, I remember him saying, he said, I've been in a few fights in my day, and, I've always won. I said, well, what do you do if the guy's bigger than you? He goes, make him your friend. So he told me, make him your friend. And I was like, wow. So what if you can't make the biggest guy on the field your friend? That's the question. And, of course, there is an automatic, right? When you look at this picture up there, it brings to mind the underdog, like we talked about Sunday morning. It brings to mind individuals who have the brawn and the brute force, and they want to be in charge. And it gives you the idea that the little guy who trusts God is going to lead the entire people to a point, to a lesson that they should not have ever forgotten. One of the biggest things I'm taken by is, I think in the background you're probably looking at Philistine soldiers, probably. But one of the biggest things is the scene where nobody in God's army stands up to the evil. Nobody. And that's the sad situation we have here. The idea that the writer and the author is trying to suggest is we have just come out of, recently, an era where every man did that which is right in his own eyes. We just come out of that. We've also just come out of an era which showed the ups and downs of doing it God's way versus doing it your own way. And every single time they did it their own way, they suffered for it. And here we are. What are they doing? They're not trusting in God again. It's almost like a continuation of the cycle that we saw over and over again in the book of Judges. So now we're right back to it, except this time we actually have a king on the throne, and even the king is not doing it God's way. So it's going to take a little boy. I'm just going to say it like that. It's going to take a little boy to come in there out of the mouth of babes and lead people in the direction they should never have left in the first place. Okay? So, God gives the victory. Anybody want to say anything about this before we get moving? All right. I said to you earlier, I'm going to look at this from one particular emphasis, okay? We have one kind of aspect of it, and that is really what jumped out at me the most is the word champion. Back in 04, I wrote a little book called Empowering God's Champions. And in that book, I dealt with the David-Goliath conflict in the Old Testament here. And I tried to make constant application to say, you're just like that. If you've ever been up against an enemy that looked bigger than you, then it's not by your own power that you're fighting the enemy. It's by God's power. And by that power, you always are led into a victory, a victorious place. It may not always turn out the way you want it, but you always have in your mind that you have the victory because of God. So you're never a loser. You're always a champion. Now, let me ask you, well, let's go ahead and jump into it right now. The concept of champion in the Bible, you would think, wouldn't you, that the Bible is a book for champions? Wouldn't you think that? You would also think that any of us in here who are the Lord's children, God's children through Christ, are champions of God. Wouldn't you think that? All right. Look at the little mark up there, the line. The word champion is only used blank times in the entire Bible. Does anybody want to take a big stab at that? How many times do you think the word champion is used in the Bible? Champion. How many? 3 in the NIV? That's one more than KJV. You would think champion would be all through the Bible, wouldn't you? But it's only used twice. Isn't that something? Now, I would preach and teach all day long that every one of us in here are empowered. We're champions. We got the victory. We're going to overcome. We've already won. We got everything we need. I would tell you that all day long. And yet the Bible doesn't refer to us in the same way it refers to championship. Now, here's the kicker. You ready? Both of those times that the word champion is used in the Bible, or I don't know about the NIV, but in the KJV, which we're going off that traditional conservative text, guess who both of those references regard or are about? Who do you think? It's about Goliath. It wasn't even about David. It wasn't even about Saul. It wasn't about any Old Testament warrior. Samson didn't even get called the champion of God. Okay? The word champion is only used 2 whole times, and both times it's used in reference to a godless, pagan man named Goliath. And the Bible, the biblical author, I presume Samuel here, calls Goliath a champion. Throw it down and let's go home. Isn't that something? It really boggles, it sort of boggles the mind. So the question we have is, probably a lot. What makes Goliath a champion? Especially since we know the beginning and the end of the story, right? What makes Goliath a champion? How would we today, let's just talk about championship. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say champ? First thing. Do what? Okay, all right, very good. What else? I'm going to try and mingle all these things together. Do what? A winner? Winner? What? What? Super Bowl, sporting events, activity of some kind. Champion. When I was little, Muhammad Ali was still going. And my mom said, don't you dare watch that boxing. And I didn't, but somehow I knew Muhammad Ali was a champion. See what we're saying? Champions are always the guy that makes it through the end of the year, through the season, and he battles his way till he gets to the very, very top. And once he assumes that position, he's going to be a champion for how long? Until somebody else takes it. When you talk about a basketball team, for example, taking the championship trophy, they generally take it until the next year, and then someone else takes it. You get a dynasty when you get 3 or 4 in a row, right? That's a dynasty, and that's huge. But invariably, eventually, every champion gets taken out of the way. So how we determine the marks of a champion are, they are the best of the best, and nobody can beat them for now. That's what makes a champion. The conflict, Michael Jordan versus LeBron. Who's the greatest of all time? How many times do we hear that, that constant, stuff? Michael Jordan's not even playing ball anymore, and yet they still call him, right? Still call him a champion. But there's always people that say, well, there's somebody better than him if you put them up against each other right now. So I want you to look real quick at 1 Samuel 17, 32 and 33. 1 Samuel 17, which is where we are. 32 and 33. I'm using the New King James. I probably should use a KJV, but we're going to go ahead and go with this one. 32 and 33. So look at verse 31 there. When the words which David spoke were heard. They reported those words to Saul. And basically David's angry that nobody's doing anything about this terrible, terrible Philistine. And then David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of that guy, and because of him, your servant would go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, you are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. Does anybody have a KJV in here? Anybody reading the KJV? All right. Does KJV use the term champion, Philistine champion, right here, or is it's earlier? Okay. All right. Bottom line is, Saul is saying, you're not going to be the guy that goes up and fights this dude. He's the big one. He's the champion. And there's no way you, this little kid, are able to fight and defeat this man of war. Now, when we think about man of war, regarding Goliath, what do you think gave him that title? What gave Goliath that title, man of war? Has he seen some battles before? That's the idea, right? He's been there and done that. Do what? That's right. This dude he's been chosen for this. He's been a Philistine for a very long time. He's on the field of battle now. He was before, and he will be tomorrow. That's the idea. He's their champion. All right, so when you look at this picture here, that's again kind of how we view it. You know, David's half the size of Goliath, maybe even shorter than that. But here we go. What is it that gives Goliath his championship? What was it that Israel's so afraid of? And I know we haven't got to read the text because that would literally take, 8 to 10 minutes. And it's not a bad thing, but we want to, since we already know about it, you're Israel, and you're standing there watching this giant come out every day, right? Taunting anybody in the army of Israel. Fight me, fight me, fight me. Now, hopefully we all know ancient battle scenes oftentimes utilized the idea of let's not lose everybody in our armies by conflict, Let's instead each designate one. It goes way back to ancient Greece days when they would do this. So every army would say, this is the guy we're sanctioning and advocating as our one statement of championship. And the two champions would fight it out on the horizon. And the one that wins becomes the victor. And his army, therefore, takes the victory of all of them. And that's really what we're asking for. Goliath is saying, bring me your guy. Bring me your one. And there's not a one out there that would stand up against Goliath. And you have to ask yourself, would you? If I saw that dude in a big dark valley, a big dark alleyway, would I keep walking down the alley or would I turn around and go the other way? And I understand we're talking about spiritual conflict here, but I'm saying physically speaking, wasn't he a sight? And wasn't he an imposing figure just by standing there, and listen to this, looking the part? I know, he's bigger than Aaron. Aaron, stand up for us, would you please? All right, he's 6'6". So we're going to talk about his height here in a little bit, okay? I have known one guy, and he was 7'6". Do what? Yeah, we'll go. Yeah, a conservative 9.9, but probably around the 10-foot mark. So you look at Aaron, and here he is. Now Aaron has size to him. Aaron's a big boy. But the guy I knew who was 7'6", he was a youth minister intern in DeKalb, Texas, back in the year 1999, and he had gigantism. He had almost no muscle tone at all. Very skeletal. And he would play basketball with us, but he could not jump this high to save his life. But if you, right. You can go and sit down now, Aaron. But if you were to give this guy, basically what I'm saying is, he was big, but he was not strong. He was not terrifying. In fact, in a fight, he would have lost to just about anybody who would hit him in, places that, in other words, he's not able to bend down quickly and defend himself. It would not have been good. So I'm saying there is a big difference between the height of someone like Aaron versus 7'6", with a guy that's way, way abnormally tall. So take that idea, take 10 foot tall and add girth and size and muscle tone, and then add the armor and the training, the valor of war from a Philistine perspective, and you've got some kind of beast. That's what we got going on in this picture. So the one thing I'm trying to get down to is, and listen closely on this, Goliath had something that terrified all of them, and that was his look, but his reputation. Think about this. If an army has their champion, and he's coming out to you, and they've battled before, that's going to imply that this champion of theirs has been here, and he's done that, and he's never lost. If he's lost, somebody else has taken his place, right? That's the idea. And the fact that Goliath is well known, Saul declares that, he's the guy that's going to terrorize people just by being seen. And nobody in their right mind is going to say, yeah, let me go out here and fight him. I'll be the one. No, you're not. That's the idea that most people were thinking. So look at verses 1 through 4 of chapter 17, and we get into this feeling right now, okay? Now the Philistines had gathered their armies, notice the plurality, together to battle, and were gathered at Soko, which belongs to Judah. So they're way down in what we would call the southern kingdom, right? Anyway, if and once the kingdom is divided. They camped between Soko and Azekah in Ephes Damim, and Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and they encamped in the valley of Elah. So there it is. And to this day, the valley of Elah is exactly like it was back then. No changes. If you go over there and visit it, you're going to pretty much see it the way it was, okay? So valley of Elah, and they drew up in a battle array against the Philistines. Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, and the valley was between them. So here we have both factions on either side of the valley. And the champion, there it is, verse 4, the champion went out from the camp of the Philistines named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. 6 cubits and a span. So obviously, if I talk about a cubit being the elbow to the tip of my middle finger, there's my cubit. Now obviously, if you're 4 feet 8, your cubit's going to be a little bit different, right? Generally speaking, we're talking about a cubit being between 18 to 21 inches. That's normally the way it is, unless you're talking about an Egyptian cubit, which was slightly different. But we're talking about a Hebrew cubit right here. So you add these things up, and you're conservatively looking at 9.5 up to 10. I don't mind saying, this dude's 10 foot tall. He's right at 10 foot tall, okay? So he had a bronze helmet on his, well, we're not going to read all this. Basically, and I'm going to say this in the next slide, what Goliath had was the army on his back. See, as long as he does what he's supposed to do, guess what the rest of the armies don't have to do? Nothing. They have to do nothing if Goliath does his job. So don't you think Goliath is an excellent intimidator? He looks terrifying. He's massive. No one guy wants to go up against this person, right? So you look at this, and here's what you got. The word champion, which is used twice in the Bible, both times for Goliath, is used by Samuel. However, what our translators translate the word champion from, it's 2 different Hebrew words, okay? So you have to keep that in mind. When we talk about Goliath, Samuel is trying to refer to him in 2 different ways as this status symbol for the Philistines. So the first way is he could scare people into submission. He didn't even have to fight you. He could hold that sword and hold that javelin. His little man could be out here holding his, and by the way, you read that? He's got his own guy holding the shield, so he doesn't even have to worry about it. All right? But he can come out there every single day and say, ha, 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 you'll never defeat me. Who do I have to dare fight me? And guess what nobody ever does? Nobody says, I want to be the one. Nobody does that. That's one thing about his championship. So verse 51, let me go back to chapter 17. Verse 51 through 54, 51 through 54, notice, therefore David ran over and stood over the Philistine, took a sword, drew it out of its sheath, killed him, and cut off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead. See that? Their that's the guy that can't be beat. And he's the guy that's dead. All right, so the first thing is, all he's got to do is scare them into submission so they're so afraid they don't want to move. The second reason we look at the concept of championship is he was there as their choice to get the win. In other words, if all the Philistines are saying, okay, who do we want to go out there every day and terrorize? You. We're going to take you. Now, Saul does refer to him as a man of war. Got no doubt in my mind this dude has fought before and he's killed before and he has no problem whatsoever with that idea. But we are looking at two perspectives now. Israelite perspective is something like this. There's no way in the world I could never beat him, and I'm not going to. Button your lip and say nothing. Let it go, let it go. But the Philistine perspective is, that's our man, he's never going to lose. See that? That's the views that you have going on here in the Valley of Elah. All right? So that's your two big perspectives, and that leads us to this. Goliath is this menace. He causes others to cower in frustration and anger and anxiety, and they're terrified every single day of him. Goliath makes people cower like little puppies. All right? And the one thing we know about champions are winners, right? Champions win. That's why I said all of us in here are champions. So we look at verses 51 through 54 one more time. This is a guy that's been taunting and belittling your God and degrading everything we've ever known about the spiritual holiness of the nation of Israel. They've been called by the law to shine his lights and to put God first and to allow God to be so much part of their life that he does all the fighting for them. And here they are for days and weeks, too scared to move. It tells you where their faith is right now. So you pick up there in verse number 51, when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, what do? They ran away. Like, here they are now. They're the little scared puppies. They don't really, do they, want to fight? Their champion's dead. We were putting all of our eggs in that basket, and he's gone. Imagine if your champion's dead, what hope do you have? That would be an idea. So you keep on reading there in verse number 52. The men of Israel and Judah arose, and they shouted, and they pursued the Philistines as far as the entrance to the valley and the gates of Ekron. That's one of the 5, by the way, Philistine cities, and wounded the Philistines. They fell on the road in these places, even as far as Gath, which is where Philistine giant Goliath was from, and down there to Ekron, okay? Verse 54, David took the head of the Philistine. He brought it to Jerusalem. He put his armor in his tent, all right? So he's carrying his head around, the head of triumph, the head of victory. Who led the Israelites to shouting in victory? Little 5-foot, ruddy complected David. That's who. And you wonder why King Saul grows in jealousy very, very quickly. Okay? So let's get on into this right quick. Just how big was David and how effective was he? Well, we've already talked. He was about 10 foot tall. When we talk about his strength, he was effective at what he did. He was a intimidator. Let's call him an intimidator. But he had it. He could back it up. He was used to fighting trained warriors on the field of battle. He was not used to stopping a projectile flying through the air at blazing speed. That's not what he was accustomed to. But if he fought me and I have my sword and my shield, I'm going down. That's the idea. So when we look at this, I'm 5'10" Take 10 inches off me. Now double that down, and you got Goliath, about a 10-footer. And his armor, if you include, now this is the kicker. We look at a lot of people, they say 180 pounds, 190 pound total, 210 pound total. When you take the 210 pound, which I think is the total, and then add the shield, which he wasn't really carrying, you come up to about 270 to 290. All right, if you take off that 70 to 90 pound shield, or 80 pound shield, you're going to drop it down to about 210. But the bottom line is, can you imagine carrying around a helmet that's 30 pounds by itself? You know, I'd be wobbling, my head would be wobbling just in a few minutes. The spearhead, being that kind of weight. And when you I wrote them all down here. Helmet, 30 pounds. The chain of mail, 150 pounds. You ever tried to run with a backpack full of bricks? That's what he's doing, 150 pounds, my. His spear, 30 pounds, and the shield being the 80 to 90 pound mark. So you have a total of about 270 pounds, and you can read that in chapter 17, not chapter 27, chapter 17, verses 4 through 7. Okay? So Goliath taunted. We've already gone through this. He's taunting, and the Philistines are trusting their physical champion. But this becomes a spiritual battle. And I hope we keep that in mind when we face physical challenges, to keep the spiritual in there. If we always keep the spiritual where it belongs, we always come out with a victory, because we're looking at this from spiritual eyes. And we're growing in this, regardless of how bad it may, turn out. So God was Israel's spiritual champion, and David champions the cause that Israel had forgotten. The battle belongs to the Lord. Let him be the one to give you the victory. And that's what David said. You come at me with a spear and a javelin and a battle axe and a sword and whatever else, but I come to you in the name of God. You see that? That's powerful, strong stuff. So when Goliath fell, he was a champion no more. Now, I don't know how long it's going to take for good old Philistine folks to figure out their next champion. They're going to find another guy to take his place. That's the nature of the physical beast. Philistines, though, as we saw, fell into a panic because the one who never failed had failed. And that means their victory was no longer possible. They lost. Now, I know I've told you this before, and this is a key element to all ancient Near East battles, even if it's not Israel. I'm talking about if the Philistines were fighting against some little Mesopotamian tribe, it's going to be the same idea. And that is, your God is on display when you're fighting. So if the Philistines carry Dagon into battle, and the Mesopotamians bring some sort of, one of their gods or goddesses into battle, then the winner of that battle shows the superiority of their God. And that means if the Philistines win, Dagon is the strongest god between us and this god over here. So that's the ingredient we need to hold on to, that Israel's God is being taunted. Now we know God is the God of heaven and earth. God doesn't lose, but by letting the Philistines win, or thinking that they could win, you've shown that God doesn't really have the power in your life that you declare him to have. See that? So the one who failed had failed, and now not just is Goliath gone and we're in trouble, but our God Dagon is inferior compared to the God of Israel, the God of Yahweh. So Goliath talked a good game, but he should have been afraid facing David, because now he was against God Almighty. Champions are replaced all the time by somebody else, no matter how good they were. Somebody beats the records and goes to a higher place until somebody better than that comes along. All right? So the lesson is, spiritual champions do not fail. And I hope that you feel that way tonight, that you are just that. When earthly champions are gone, another is going to take their place. But our Lord, Jesus Christ, has no equal at all. All right? We got 4 or 5 minutes maybe, or are we done? We have a few? Okay. We're going to take comments or questions now. Go ahead, Benny. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. 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 Canaanites. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Coming down, sweeping around. Yeah. Right in here, yeah. Right on the Mediterranean edge. Yeah. 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 They were. We would call them giant people, right? Absolutely. I have no doubt about that at all. I would call Aaron back there a giant, but you know. Sardinia. Yeah. Oh, it's families, caves filled with them. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we could get off easy on that and talk about it, because I I got to hush. I will chase a rabbit for the next 20 minutes. Let me say this. Here's a trivia for you. Why did David, it's just, I don't know if we have an answer really, but I have a cute little possibility. Why did David take 5 smooth stones from the creek bed when he only needed 1? Boom. That's it. How many brothers did Goliath have? He had 4 other brothers. Now, what would happen if brother gets mad that his brother just fell on the battlefield and he comes at him? David will be ready. That's the idea. Do what? Yeah, right. All right, anybody else want to add anything? Go ahead, Patrick. Yeah. Sure. Mighty men. Anakim, maybe? Okay, yeah. Yep. You're right. Right. We don't have time for it. I'd love to just throw it out there and see what happens. What? You wish you could. All right. Anybody else got anything? All right. Tomorrow night. Oh, go ahead, Aaron. Please do. Yeah. No, it doesn't. It doesn't say his weight. The best I can do is he was strong enough to hold all that up, and if you put girth to that height, it wasn't any big deal for him. He was a monster. Yeah.
Especially with like training and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. He could probably run 15 miles that way, not flinch, Do what? Yeah, they do. And there are trials out there that do that, and they try to figure it. You can Google it. I'm sure you'll find some 3 or 4 random ideas about it. But like that gigantoid I was talking about, the 7'6" guy, he couldn't have held up 15 pounds extra. He just would buckle under that pressure. And he died recently, by the way. He didn't make it more than 20 more years. So that was just had a very short life cycle because of that. Nope, they do not. They do not. So it's a sad thing. Goliath is not that. Goliath was a man. He was a man. Anyway, all right. Tomorrow night, we talk about friendship. Tomorrow night's Jonathan and David. Aw. You have a good friend? Be blessed. You feel blessed by that. You should. All right, we're going to talk about good friends tomorrow night, and then the night after that, we will deal with David cutting the robe of Saul, not killing him when he could have, and sparing his life. All right? Anybody else got anything before we end? Do it now. The reading? Okay, is it 18? Yeah, 18. Ask me tomorrow and I'll tell you. 18, 19. So we have 2. You go all the way back to like chapter 9, you find Jonathan. But he becomes his friend a little later on. So, all right, that's it. We have an activity tonight with the group. All right, adults.